Hi, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Saiful Azhari bin Rosli. In this video, we will talk about environmental policy, and we will talk about the introduction, the policy problem, main objectives and goals for the policy, actor in the creation of the policy, followed by implementation of the policy, and lastly is about evaluation and recommendation of the policy. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Saiful Azhari bin Rosli from M1102A, and my group member is Amirul Hakimi, Ikmal Hazi, Amir Farid, and Nur Ilya. Our topic is about environmental policy, and I will start first. I will start with the introduction. Public policy. What is public policy? Public policy can be defined as a guideline for a government to achieve public goals and how to deal with the problem that the government face. According to Thomas Dyer, public policy is anything that the government choose to do or not to do. It means that it depends on the government whether to take an action or not about the problems that the government face. Environmental policy is an example of public policy. Environmental policy can be defined as a guideline for the government to face any problems regarding the environmental issue. This policy is important because it helps the government to identify and solve the problems about environmental issue that the government face. It also helps the government to protect and preserve the environment. Environment is important to human because without environment, human will go extinction, will face the extinction. Malaysia Environmental Policy, which is National Policy on the Environmental, was formulated in 21 October 2002 under Minister of Science, Technology and Environment. At that time, the ministry is Datuk Sri Lau Hieng Ding. There are three purposes of this policy, which is to protect and prevent the environment and the resources in the country and to meet the needs of the people within the country. The second one is to ensure economic development, social development, and the environmental protection. And lastly is to provide both federal and state agencies, the manufacturing sector, the local community, and other shareholders with guidelines to ensure that the environment is clean, sustainable, balanced, and secure. After the establishment of national policy on the environment, Malaysia has introduced two policies, which is the first one is Malaysia's National Biodiversity Policy 1998. The goals of this policy is to conserve and improve the environment and the stability of the ecosystem. And the second one is the Third National Agricultural Policy from 1998 until 2010. This policy aims to enhance the productivity and strengthen the relationship with other sectors, the exploration of new frontier areas, and the sustainable conservation. It also seeks to contribute to the agricultural sector's growth. Law and policy is related. In order to manage, guide, carry out the environmental policy and achieve the objective of the policy, the government must formulate and enforce law. The government realized that human activities that related to land can damage the land. So, the government has formulated the National Land Court NLC 1965. This act provides a good external environment to protect the land. This law also provides convincing basis to create policies and protection of the land. And the second one is Environmental Quality 1974, known as EQA, was created to solve the environmental problems. This two laws is important to government because it help and it is the job of government to implement the national policy on the environmental.
My name is Nurilia Shamira binti Sabri. I am from N4IM1102A. My ID is 2018406982. I will present about policy actors and implementation of policy in environmental policy. Policy actors is groups of individuals who participate in policy processes and whose preference will ultimately determine the policy choice. It is mean that this is groups of individuals who participate in policy process. According to Tackett Person, 1951, in his view, in order to analyze a social action, we must focus essentially on the simplest unit that retains the significance of what person terms a unit act. Tackett Person was the first to formulate a systematic theory of social system, which he did as a part of his AGIL paradigm. This universal definition of the actor concept means that the analyst must review all individuals and social groups concerned by a specific collective problem. It is institution who will determine the extent to which actors can transform their preference into public policy. Policy actors can rejecting the distinction made by several policy actors who is rather passive or whose behavior is determined by the system in which action occurs, and a true actor who has become active and autonomous in relation to the institutional and social context. After all, it is institution who will determine the extent to which actors can transform their preference into public policy. First actor of environmental policy is Department of Environment, DOE. The government passed the Environmental Act as a law on 14 March 1974 and came into force on 15 April 1975. The initial stage of implementation and administration of the Act was carried out by the General Planning Division, Prime Minister's Department. However, due to the wide range of powers under the Act, the Environment Division was established on 15 September 1975 under the Ministry of Local Government and Environment to implement the Act in addition to managing environmental affairs. The Environment Division was transferred to the Ministry of Science, Technology and Environment in March 1976 before being upgraded to the Department of Environment of 1 September 1983. In May 2001, the Department of Environment was transferred to the Federal Government Administrative Center, Putrajaya, and in April 2006, the Department of Environment has been transferred under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, present for Putrajaya. The Act provides for the Office of Director General of Environmental Quality, whose duty as contained in Section 3, Bracket 1, including firstly, administrating the Act and its order and regulation. Secondly, coordinating all activity relating to the discharge of waste into the environment. Thirdly, controlling such activities through the issue of license of wards and substance which are of danger to the quality of the environment. Second, Minister of Natural Resources and Environment. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, NRE, was established on 27 March 2004 following the formation of a new cabinet by the Prime Minister. There are 13 divisions under Ministry of Natural Resource and Environment (NRA). The ultimate legislative authority over the Act lies with both the Parliament and the Minister of Natural Resources and Environment. The Minister is allowed to make regulation aimed at environmental protection and pollution control. Such regulations can prescribe standards or criteria, prohibit discharge, emission, or use of any equipment which is likely to endanger the environment, and determine the quantum of fines to be imposed. As regards the minister, he has the power to pass, amend, or revoke any regulation, rules, or orders by virtue of the legislative power conferred on him. Apart from that, matters of environmental policy standards and criteria for the quality of the environment are also within the jurisdiction of the minister. Considering the Act is a framework legislation, it is therefore important that these subsidiary legislation are introduced to ensure that the main provisions of the Act can take effect. At the same time, it is also important for new rules, regulations, and orders to be introduced as a platform for the implementation of environmental policy directive of the country. Third actor is Environmental Quality Council. This council is a body provided for its establishment under Section 4 Bracket 1 Environmental Quality Act AKAS 1974 Amendment 2012, which serve to provide views, advice, suggestion for improvement and recommendation to the minister in relation to the Environmental Quality Act 1974 and advise the minister on any matter referred to him by the minister. The event was also comprised of representatives from various relevant ministries, representatives of the Sabah and Sarawak government, representative of the petroleum industry, representative of the oil palm industry, representative of the rubber industry, representative of Federation of Manufacturers, representative of academic staff, and representative of non-governmental organization (NGOs). The equity was established to further uphold the trust of the country's environmental policy and its objective of attaining a balance between development goals and environmental protection. It is functional part of the council to provide the development sector a proper advice and suggest environmental strategy who most suit to their needs rather than highlighting their views with regard to the EQA regulations only. Implementation of environmental policy is government-made environmental partner from Department of Environment by Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. Enforcement action being carried out by the Department of Environment, Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, which a limited number of enforcement personnel and equipment cannot cover every source of pollution in the country quite effectively. Meanwhile, environmental awareness activity which has been implemented so far, which is expected to complete the enforcement programs, cannot reach as far as covering all target groups to mobilize its individual member of society to truly appreciate and also together responsible for preserving the environment, thus preventing pollution from occurring. Therefore, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment would like to move into a new era to change the approach currently used in implementing this environmental awareness program. Therefore, environmental partner has been made on 4 June 2009 by Yang Amat Berhormat Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin. This program has been made to develop awareness and mobilize community members in environmental conservation and preservation activities. Second is National Forestry Policy 1978 Amendment 1992, Department of Forestry, Peninsular Malaysia, JPSM, Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources. The objective of the National Forestry Policy is to preserve and manage the country forests based on sustainable management principles. In addition, this policy is to protect the environment and preserve biodiversity, genetic resource, and enhance research and education. This policy has declared adequate and strategic areas throughout the country based on the rational concept of land use a permanent forest reserve. Permanent forest reserve will be managed and classified under 4 main functions. First main function is forest protection. Forest protection is to ensure the sustainability of the country climate and physical condition, control water resource, soil fertility, environmental quality, conservation of biodiversity, and reduce damage by flood and erosion to rivers and agriculture land. Second main function is work forest. Work forest is for continuous supply production of forest products at economically reasonable rates in the country and required for agriculture, consumption, local industry, and export. Third main function is amenity forest. Amenity forest is to maintain a certain number of areas sufficient as a place of recreation, ecotourism, and for public awareness. Fourth main function is research and education forest. Research and education forest is to run research, education, and conservation of biodiversity.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Amir Farid bin Ahmad Fazil Sumandi. I am from AM1102A. So next we are going to talk about evaluation of the policy based on SWOT. SWOT, S stands for strengths, which can be referred to things that are exceptionally well performed by your company or in a way that differentiates you from your competitors. Strengths can also be defined as an ability or power that can be used efficiently by the organization to achieve its goals. Next, W stands for weaknesses. Weaknesses can be defined as an obstacle faced by an organization from achieving at its optimal level. Next, opportunities. Opportunities can be defined as beneficial external variables that could offer a competitive advantage to an organization. And the last one is T, which stands for threats. Threats can be referred to variables that have a potential to harm an organization. So next, we are going to talk about evaluation. Evaluation can be referred to an important part of the educational process. The emphasis of evaluation is on improving local quality and is similar to clinical auditing. There are several purposes of evaluation, which is to identify areas where teaching can be improved, to provide feedback and encouragement for teachers, and to identify and articulate what is valued by the medical schools. Okay, next we are going to talk about strengths of the environmental policy, which is existence of Environmental Act. Environment Act 1974 can be defined as an act relating to the prevention, mitigation, regulation of the pollution, and environmental improvement, and for similar purposes. One of the factors that made this policy strong and developed was the existence of the Environment Act 1974. It is because if there are persons who disobey the provisions and regulations that were made under this policy, enforcement of the law may be made. Okay, so next we are going to talk about weaknesses of the environmental policy, which is lack of resources. Regulation of environmental law heavily depends on the distribution of resources required for the enforcement functions in terms of resources and funding. For example, if there are not enough resources to investigate and prosecute perpetrators, there is no sense in using a deterrent type of implementation. In Malaysia, as in most other developing countries, a lack of qualified and trained professionals in both public and private sectors is a rampant problem. Okay, so next we are going to talk about opportunities of the environmental policy. Opportunities of the environmental policy is to give awareness about how important the environmental policy is. This is because some of the people doesn't know that by doing a certain thing, it is bad for environment. For example, some people think that by putting your laptop in a sleep mode instead of shutting down, it will use less of the electricity, but actually it will use more of the electricity when you put in a sleep mode. We can give awareness to the public by making campaign at school or university about saving the environment, save the electricity and less the use of plastic bag. Okay, the last one is threats. Threats of the environmental policy is the public. This is because if the public did not follow the environmental policy, it can't survive and it won't save the environment. If the public can't follow or implement this policy, it will damage earth and environment and can cause a lot of death of the people.